This is Car Guys New England, your YouTube channel for anything automotive.
You bad, cause it's bit bad. Show me the bad, like chips at the front. Let's go. I'm fly like a pelican in my bed. I get my way hella quick. They just gonna put up on the elephant cut. My trunk, yeah, it's in the front. Of course, it's in the back. This a big. This a real big difference. You just want a club. I just need them racks. You just wanna party. I just wanna rock.
This is Jay with Car Guys New England, and today we're going to talk a little bit about Lowrider Hydraulics, kind of the history of them when I got into lowriding in the mid-90s, and then kind of where things are nowadays, so we'll dive into this. So I got into lowriding in the mid-1990s, roughly around 1995, 96, what was when I got into it. But at the time, there were a few brands that are still out today, and then there were a few that are no longer around. But some of the brands that come to mind would be Red's Hydraulics, Pro Hopper Hydraulics. They were the two biggest ones in the mid-90s. There was Lona Sons. There was also Showtime, but I think they came into the mix around 97, 98, around then. Also CCE existed back then, and Lowrider Hydraulics out of San Jose. They had a really cool little catalog that they used to have that had all sorts of cool diagrams in it and everything, and that was pretty neat back in the day. So back in the mid-90s, mainly everything was of higher quality. Now, it wasn't of high performance, but it was all high quality stuff. So most of these manufacturers sold pumps with Prestolite motors on them, which are extremely good motors and are still very desirable to this day. Also, Fennerstone pump heads was a big thing until they kind of pulled out of the lowrider market. I'd say around 98, it started getting very hard to find that stuff. Porky's Hydraulics was a very high quality base brand for the lowriders out there. They also had those custom illuminated switch boxes, which were, absolutely enormous. I'd be afraid to drive around with some of these in the car, but it was innovative at the time. There was a lot of innovation. Red's was very innovative with their styling double top pumps that had the Stirling dump cartridges actually built into the blocks, which made plumbing a lot friendlier for somebody who's new into lowriding. The problem was those Stirling cartridges were known for expanding, and they were very problematic. Even on a regular setup, all the Red stuff had those Stirling valves, which I remember just having to order tons of those cartridges just to change out in the dumps. But another innovation that Reds had with those Stirling dumps was the cartridge was actually offset in the block to allow fluid to just flow right through the dump. So it didn't have to go through an obstruction like a Delta dump or something like that. I kind of talked about that in another video. Also, Reds had special cylinders that were basically crimped. They were like crimped and welded, but they were meant to have like a smoother flow profile into them, which was something that was pretty unique at the time. Reds also had the LA square dumps, which in reality was just a Delta dump in a square dump looking configuration. But they didn't perform any better. But that was, something that they also offered at the time. So Pro Hopper was another company that was innovative. They started out, I believe, as National Machine, and then they became Pro Hopper. And they were at their pinnacle in the mid to late 90s, early 2000s, until they kind of got out of, selling parts and stuff like that. But one innovation that they came up with was the Maypower block. And this allowed you to connect two motors back to back onto a pump. which was innovative at the time, kind of a cool idea for hopping. It didn't really pan out well, and they're pretty rare today. So if you find one, it's an interesting piece to have. Now, the other innovation, with Featherstone kind of pulling out of the lowrider market, cheap Chinese gears that were fixed clearance gears were flooding the market from China. And there were brands like Super Pump and just other generic stuff that wasn't really good for hopping. Lowriders started to turn to Marzocchi pumps. Marzocchi pumps were brought in from Italy, and they are a pressure balance pump, which means that the pressure created on one side of them actually pushes the gears into the walls of the center block of that pump head, which creates a tighter seal. So you're going to get more pressure, and they're also going to hop better. The downside is that they wear out a lot faster than a traditional fixed clearance pump like a Featherstone. But those came to the market. A lot of people were starting to use those, but Pro Hopper introduced their own pump heads. I believe they were the G-Force series pump heads. And, it was a take on the pressure balanced style pumps. And a lot of people really loved those pump heads, that they were good pump heads. And to this day, they're actually still desirable. So one brand that I forgot to mention in my kind of intro rant was Hilo. Hilo Hydraulics has been around for quite a long time, actually. Became very popular in the mid to late 90s. And the quality of the plating on their parts is exceptional. They also have a lot of choices available as far as, gold plating, stuff like that. And also, I've found over the years that they're pretty good about like custom requests. Like if you need a certain port threaded a certain way, they'll do it for you, which is pretty cool. Now, another interesting brand to talk about is Showtime Hydraulics. And they no longer sell kits or anything like that. So they're kind of out of the lowrider game. One thing that actually made them stand out was the fact that they would ship their pumps and components all apart. So basically you'd get a kit, your motors wouldn't be installed, the pump heads wouldn't be installed, tanks wouldn't be on it. Like it was kind of a build your own kit setup. And it was interesting. And it was good for people that were experienced with lowriders and knew how to work on the pumps. Now, the thing that I think bit them in the ass was a lot of people that are new to the game were buying kits as their first kit from Showtime, and they didn't know how to properly assemble the kit. So they would have tons of problems as far as like pump head sealing correctly, people forgetting to put in the key between the motor and the pump head, or not putting the pump head seal correctly to the block, and just having all sorts of issues. Overall, it was a quality brand. You could get steel blocks, which was nice. They sold Marzocchi pump heads. The cylinders were excellent cylinders. They held up to everything that you could throw at them. And it was really a good brand. So it was kind of too bad to see that one go. So Lona Sons was also well known as a quality brand back in the day. And one thing that made them unique was they had rebuildable solenoids. That way you could just take out the old solenoid, take it apart, get the kit to fix it, and you were able to fix the solenoid and be good to go. They advertised it as you only need one solenoid per pump with those. The problem is I wouldn't personally feel comfortable with that. I'd want to run 2 still per pump to help prevent a runaway pump. So that's kind of the downside of that. And also these solenoids were very large. So that was another drawback of it. But that existed back in the day, and it was pretty cool. I've seen similar things out today, but Lona Sons is not a brand that you see on the market anymore these days. All right, so let's talk about modern hydraulics. So obviously some of these companies from the mid-90s that were around are still around today. And you're probably wondering what has changed, what has changed with these, hydraulics. So obviously everything's gotten a lot more expensive, which was a shock to me getting back into the game. But also the quality overall. Now, I'm not saying that everything's junk, but compared to the days of Prestolite and Fennerstone, things are more generic. So the motors are all Chinese motors for the most part. You're not going to see any particular brand name motors. After Prestolites, like Seikos were the big thing, which is still a Chinese motor. But everyone's pretty much selling generic motors, generic pump heads for the most part. People like CCE still offer Marzocchi, and same thing with Hilo still sells them, and also a few others. And then some companies like Red's Hydraulics today are actually making their own pump heads now, which is pretty cool. But overall, everything's pretty much generic. So if you choose any particular brand, long as it has a good quality pump head, they're all pretty much equal. Now, I'm not going to trash CCE because their pumps are great, but my own personal experience with their cylinders over the years has been completely disappointing, to say the least. I had one car that I put hydraulics in, and once I had bled the setup, and then I tightened up the line on the rear hydraulic cylinder, when I went to lift the car up, the complete top of the cylinder just blew off like it was a bad weld. Maybe it could have been a fluke or something like that, but that really broke my trust with that brand. The other thing that I've seen a lot over the years is people three-wheeling with their cylinders, and those cylinders bending very easily. Now, the cylinders are chrome moly shafts in most hydraulic kits, so they shouldn't be bending. So it might be a lower quality steel or whatnot, or just not to spec. But for that reason, I'd personally stay away from their cylinders. Nothing wrong with their pumps. They sell Marzocchi pump heads, so it's a good brand. Hoppo's is another good brand that's out there today. Very high quality kits. Again, it's pretty much all generic stuff inside it, but they're nice looking kits. They're put together nicely. The other nice thing is, like people like Hoppo's, like you can get frame reinforcement kits from them. Same thing with a lot of places, which is nice. And then that brings me to the topic of Blackmagic Hydraulics. That's all quality stuff, mostly made in-house in Las Vegas. I definitely am a fan of Blackmagic Hydraulics, and they seem to put out a good quality product. My only gripe would be the wait times. Like if you're looking to get like custom chrome components, things like that, that would be, kind of my only gripe. Other brands like MVP Hydraulics exist out there, and they've brought a lot of innovation to the market. For people with piston pumps, they're threading the return ports inside the pumps and installing check valves, which prevents the dumps from getting pressure locked, which is a pretty cool innovation. And also, I believe they were one of the first brands to offer locking set screws on the collars of the cylinders, which that's a quality innovation too, especially if you've ever had that collar back off and go through your hood or your rear deck of the car, then obviously that's, some quality stuff right there. Nowadays, honestly, I'd take a look at some of the other smaller guys out there offering hydraulic kits and give them the opportunity, support small business. Obviously, a lot of these businesses are still small business, but there's the smaller guys out there. I absolutely love Lizarde Hydraulics. He has quality products. He also sells specialty things. For example, any frame reinforcement you're looking for, you know, kits, pre-done A-arms, things like that. He has that to offer. The other cool thing is that he also offers modded motors, meaning that the motors have been taken apart. They've been insulated with liquid electrical tape on the inside. Armatures are wrapped so they don't come apart under the heat of a spinning motor in a hopper. And also adding a ground post to the motors. That way they're not grounding through an aluminum block. So you're getting the maximum amount of power to the motor. So definitely check out Lizarde Hydraulics. You know, and there's a ton of other brands out there. They're all worth checking out now. You know, and I'd say for the most part, the playing field has kind of equalized between all of these brands. So it's kind of an interesting time that we live in for Lowrider Hydraulics. As always, guys, thank you very much for watching. If you're not subscribed to our channel, please subscribe to our channel and help us hit our goal of 100K subs. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to give the video a like. Questions or comments, be sure to comment down below. This is Jay with Car Guys New England. Until next time, take care.